You fooled me. You really did. I'll give it to you. Props to you. You fooled me. I thought that you were a person that I could trust in. Somebody that I truly had love for. Somebody that I thought I was going to have a future with. Maybe a home. Something that I could build. But there is nothing to it. It was just a lie.
What happens when a simple piece of jewelry becomes the center of one of the most heated online debates? Today, we're diving into something called nose ring theory, and trust me, the reactions are absolutely explosive. If you've been on social media lately, you've probably seen the chaos erupting in comment sections everywhere. Women posting videos, men making bold claims, and everyone picking sides in what might be the strangest cultural battleground of our time. But here's the thing that nobody's talking about. This isn't really about jewelry at all. So what exactly is nose ring theory? According to its supporters, it's the idea that women with septum piercings tend to hold specific political views and cultural beliefs that lean heavily progressive. The theory suggests you can predict someone's entire worldview just by looking at a small piece of metal in their nose. Sounds ridiculous, right? Well, that's where things get interesting. The controversy started when content creators began sharing personal stories and observations about patterns they claimed to notice. These weren't just random hot takes. We're talking about detailed accounts of relationships, friendships, and interactions that supposedly followed predictable scripts. And the responses, let's just say they've been intense enough to break the internet multiple times over. Here's where the psychology gets fascinating. The human brain is literally wired to find patterns, even when they don't exist. It's called confirmation bias, and it's incredibly powerful. When someone believes in nose ring theory, they start paying attention to examples that support their belief while ignoring contradictory evidence. Meanwhile, those who oppose it do the exact same thing in reverse. But there's something deeper happening here that reveals uncomfortable truths.
Because physiologically, men and women are different, sir. There is no debate about it. Equality is not about physics. Oh my God, this is so basic. We have to get into it. Okay, when we talk about equality and opportunity, we talk about cerebral opportunity.
About modern dating and relationships. One viral story that's been circulating involves a man who dated what he described as his dream woman for 10 months. According to his account, she was everything he wanted until she met a new friend, someone who happened to have a septum piercing and very different lifestyle choices. The story goes that within weeks, his girlfriend completely transformed her appearance, personality, and values. Hair color changed from blonde to black, clothing style shifted to dark emo aesthetics, and eventually she got a septum piercing herself. The relationship ended because he claimed she became an entirely different person, influenced by someone who represented everything he found unattractive in a partner. Now, whether you believe this specific story or not, it touches on something real that many people experience: the fear of losing someone you love to outside influences. Social pressure, peer groups, and cultural movements absolutely do shape who we become. The question is whether a nose ring is actually a reliable indicator of those influences. Critics of nose ring theory point out that millions of people have septum piercings for purely aesthetic reasons. They argue that making assumptions based on appearance is shallow stereotyping that reduces complex individuals to simple categories. They're not wrong. Judging anyone based solely on their appearance choices is problematic at best. But supporters counter with their own experiences and observations. They share stories about political discussions, relationship dynamics, and cultural attitudes that they claim follow predictable patterns. They point to social media evidence, dating app profiles, and real-world interactions as proof that their theory holds water. The emotional intensity of this debate reveals something crucial about our current cultural moment. We're living in an era of extreme polarization where every choice, from coffee shops to clothing styles, becomes a political statement. A simple piercing transforms into a tribal marker, signaling which side of countless cultural battles someone has chosen. What makes this particularly explosive is how it intersects with gender dynamics and dating culture. Men sharing these theories often frame them as protective wisdom, warning other men about potential relationship disasters. Women responding to these theories often see them as attempts to control and police female self-expression. The reality is probably somewhere in the middle, which is exactly what makes people so uncomfortable. Maybe some people with septum piercings do tend to hold certain views, maybe some don't. Maybe the correlation exists, but the causation flows in the opposite direction. Maybe it's all confirmation bias and selective memory. Here's what's definitely true.
The reality of truth is the most dangerous man in the room is never, ever, ever the loudest man in the room. The loudest man in the room is the most insecure man in the room. And that's why they put off so much flashing and vibe.
The way people react to nose ring theory tells us more about them than any piece of jewelry ever could. Those who embrace it might be seeking simple explanations for complex relationship dynamics. Those who reject it might be defensive about their own choices or genuinely concerned about unfair stereotyping. The viral nature of this debate also reveals how hungry we are for dating shortcuts and relationship heuristics. In a world where online dating has turned partner selection into a rapid-fire process of snap judgments, people desperately want reliable indicators of compatibility. They want to know if someone is worth their time before investing emotional energy. But relationships are messy, complicated, and impossible to predict based on appearance alone. The most traditional-looking person might hold radical views, while someone covered in piercings might be surprisingly conservative. Human beings refuse to fit into neat categories no matter how much we want them to. What's particularly interesting is how this theory has evolved beyond just septum piercings to include entire aesthetic packages. Supporters now talk about combinations of tattoos, hair colors, clothing styles, and lifestyle choices that supposedly cluster together. They're essentially crowdsourcing a dating algorithm based on visual cues. The danger here isn't just stereotyping, it's the self-fulfilling prophecy effect. When people expect certain behaviors from those with septum piercings, they might unconsciously treat them differently, which could actually influence those behaviors. Meanwhile, people with piercings might internalize these expectations and either rebel against them or lean into them. This brings us to the most uncomfortable question of all. What if there's some truth to the pattern recognition, even if the explanations are wrong? What if certain aesthetic choices do correlate with certain worldviews, not because the jewelry causes the beliefs, but because both are expressions of deeper personality traits or cultural affiliations? The answer matters less than what we do with it. Using any theory to write people off without getting to know them is counterproductive, but ignoring obvious social signals and cultural markers isn't particularly wise either. The key is holding space for both pattern recognition and individual complexity.
No one has ever achieved anything if they haven't faced failures, if they haven't had disappointments. To achieve anything in life, you have to be prepared to take on the odds.
As this debate continues raging across social media platforms, it's worth remembering that behind every nose ring is a human being with their own unique story, motivations, and complexity. Maybe they got the piercing for aesthetic reasons, maybe for cultural ones, maybe just because they liked how it looked on a random Tuesday. The real lesson here might be about the dangers of reducing complex human beings to simple categories, whether we're talking about nose rings, political affiliations, or any other surface-level indicators. The moment we think we've figured someone out based on appearance alone is probably the moment we've stopped seeing them as fully human. So the next time you see someone with a septum piercing, maybe instead of applying any theory, just remember that they're probably just as complicated, contradictory, and impossible to predict as you are. And maybe that's exactly as it should be.